Bukele flies to the USA, blasts the Fed and Soros. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainsley Insights, brought to you by Ainsley Bullion, Ainsley Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard as the Ainsley Group celebrates 50 years. Today, we welcome back Sam, who's been looking at some hard truths being told by the president of El Salvador. How are you going today, Sam?
Good, Chris. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. Great to be back into it again each week.
Mm.
Now, your article today was really interesting. It was a story that I'd only seen glimpses of. I hadn't really gotten the detail until I read your article, actually. That the president of El Salvador, he came in and gave a speech. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so that was Nayib Bukele, and we all know about him as being the El Salvador president. He's done some dramatic things down there. And he was actually flown into the US by the Republican Party to speak at CPAC, and that's the Conservative Political Action Conference. So he flew into Maryland and gave a big speech, mostly about how society can become a bit like a frog in water that's coming to boil, and how it's important to jump out of that water before it reaches boiling point. And what he was saying is that the United States still has a chance to jump out before it's boiling. And he said, you don't want to be like El Salvador, where it got to boiling and then we had to jump out, because that can be a 50-year process of
Hmm.
getting the country back.
And that he's quite interesting in that regard because he seems to be like he's really tough on crime, tough on a whole lot of things that you had to be probably to that point to get the country back.
Well, yes. So they had, war. They had essentially civil war, and they were overrun with gangs. And he made mention of Bill Clinton in this part of his speech. So it was quite a fiery speech. This is the guy who's rounded up about 66,000 MS-13 and other gang members. The footage was shown pretty widely on the news. I believe it was last year or so. These thousands and thousands of prisoners going into a mega prison to be put
Hmm.
to work. If you think about that number of gangsters in such a small country, a country that's smaller than a lot of states in the world, having 66,000 gangsters running around, just essentially running the state as a terrorist state and controlling the politicians as well. So he's cleaned them up and locked them all up in a mega prison.
And I mean, no one wants to, hear about that in terms of the danger that that poses to the West, where we go, well, mega prisons have lots of negative connotations. We don't want to get to that point. But I think that's what you're saying before, and his message. You don't want to get to that point, right? Like that's the whole idea. Don't let your economy, don't let your country
Mm.
get to that situation where you have to round up, tens of thousands of people who are causing chaos.
Yeah, correct. And like, sadly, it's not too far from there. If you look at the United States, the amount of people in prison, if you look at cities like, Philadelphia, which he mentioned, you have a pretty ugly situation with drugs and homelessness and
Mm.
gangs.
Yeah, no, and we see lots of footage of that at the moment. How the US,
Mm.
it's not looking great. It seems to be going one way, and that's not a great way. I know he's a major proponent of Bitcoin as well, which was interesting. Did he cover economics much in his talk there?
Well, towards the end, because a lot of it was just generally about, getting conservative values back, not being scared to go after criminals. But probably the main point of his speech was going after the Federal Reserve. So he said, when he talks to his friends in America, what they tell him is the problem here is taxes are too high. And he says, well, yes, your taxes are very high. They're exceedingly high in these, Western countries, but high taxes are not the problem. He
Hmm.
said the only reason you are taxed is to hold up the illusion that your taxes are funding the government. And then he broke down the process of how money's created. Now, keep in mind, this is at CPAC in the United States. He directly explained how it's this game between treasury bonds and the Fed, and money is essentially printed out of thin air. And he said it's one huge Ponzi scheme. It's just money being printed out of thin air. And why tax anyone if they can just print all the money they need? Of course, it came back to it being they need to uphold the illusion, because as soon as the illusion falls apart, that it's all a Ponzi scheme and they're just printing all the money back by nothing, the currency goes to zero and the world loses faith in the currency. So he said we need to structurally fix that. So, I mean, just very shocking. Fly into the heart of the United States, speak at a Republican conference, and call for ending the Fed, attacking George Soros, going after Bill Clinton, going after everyone.
And I
Really
mean,
surprising.
I just find it so relevant, the points that you were just making around, particularly that part of the speech where he's talking about how money actually works. I mean, this is something as bullion holders, and a lot of people watching this will be saying 100% agree. It's
Yeah.
something we've known for a long time. It feels like it's something that everyone just turns a blind eye to, everyone else outside of probably people holding hard assets for that particular reason. I find it quite interesting. Like you said, he's flown in right into the heartland there, speaking to the Republican Party. How was that message received? Do you think that people really do understand, or is it opening eyes to a number of people into this space of going, well, hang on, this is actually how it all works behind the scenes?
Well, every time Bukele has done one of his actions, for example, with Bitcoin or with criticizing central banking or, criticizing the UN or whoever he's criticizing, he's gotten huge beating from the mainstream media, essentially saying he's a human rights abuser, he's a dictator, saying that a lot of those MS-13 guys he put in prison are innocent and they should be let free. So it's interesting to see which side the Republican Party would go. Would they go with their benefactors? Would they go with the Fed, or would they go with this, random guy who the media hates and is in charge of a very small country, does things very opposite to the United States? And watching the speech, the cheering would not stop through the entire speech. People
Wow.
were shouting, "We love you." Some people were shouting Bitcoin. He was getting so much applause, he had to stop and take applause breaks throughout the whole speech. So very, very well received by the Republican Party.
That's very interesting, and it maybe shows a little bit of a turn in people's understanding. And that's obviously great for us sitting here looking at precious metals, Bitcoin as well, but these hard assets to be the counter or the antidote, if you like, to the problems that he's raised.
Yeah. So what do you use instead of fiat currency, as he called it, paper backed by paper? Well, it's very simple. We used silver coins in the late 60s. We still have some, if some people look in their couch, they might be able to find a few old silver coins in there. Gold, there are plenty of options. This fiat money is something that might disappear before they get that CBDC in place.
Very good point. Well, absolutely fascinating discussion, and one I think that's really going to hit home for a lot of people, that the stuff we've been saying the whole time, but it's really great to see that being acknowledged probably on that bigger stage, even if it is somewhat isolated in terms of that Republican Party conference, but still more eyes on that, the better, I think. So thank you for that today, Sam.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll chat again soon.